Hey, what's up, guys? It's Mike.
It's Dan.
Welcome to the Dandoublechen show. This topic we're going to talk about, we've been wanting to talk about for a while, and we kind of touched on it a little bit back when we did the Teen Bride video.
Yeah.
Because if you guys heard us talking about it last time, we know there is a big gender discrepancy in China where there's a lot more guys than girls because of the one-child policy. Of course, now there's the two-child policy. So back when there was the one-child policy, there's a lot more guys because couples wanted boys.
Right.
And then that caused the issue where nowadays there's a lot more guys than girls in China. And so
the figures are like by, I don't know, I think if they said in CNN like 2020, there will be 30 more million men than women.
Right.
Yeah.
So that creates a problem because then who you marry if you're a guy? So nowadays also a lot of the girls, they raise their stipulation too because they're like, well, there's not a lot of us and a lot of people are pursuing us. Then if you want to marry me, then you gotta have a car, you gotta have a house, you gotta have money.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't.
It makes it even harder for them to find the available pool
Right.
of women too. So what's the solution then? I mean, well, not just in China, but a lot of Asian countries. It happens around the world, but especially in these parts of the country, in the world where they will just buy another person from another country who was stolen from that country.
Yeah.
They could be as young as 10, 12 years old,
Yeah.
up to 18. Sometimes they're older, but generally the ages that are wanted are like 12
Younger.
or 14 younger. And this is what human trafficking is, right? This is one of the worst forms of human trafficking. And people think that they don't hear it sometimes in the news and they're like, oh, that still happens. It happens more than ever now. And now it is just so rampant, and every country has to deal with it, and definitely China because of these issues, right?
In regards to what you said about in China, they were smuggling people in from Vietnam and surrounding countries to become people's wives.
Right.
So.
Because in China, like, look, the countries around there, Vietnam, China's bordered by 14 different countries.
Right.
And those countries are, a lot of times, are a little worse off than the major
They're pretty impoverished.
Yeah.
And well, it's become almost like a business over there,
It
where
is.
you can't even trust your friends.
Right.
We've read cases where this one girl, she was kidnapped by her friend's like brother or something like that, where they're just like, hey, we're gonna go hang, and all of a sudden, hey, now you're in China.
You're in the back of a car.
Yeah.
You wake up somewhere, and it's not almost a business. It is a huge business. Annually, I read a stat. It's a trafficking around the world is a $32 billion a year industry. And it happens in America too. People make tons of money from
The
it.
difference is, like here is more sex trafficking. They're trying to, like sell them as prostitutes. But
Right.
in China, it's literally, they're trying to sell them as wives.
As
Yeah.
wives, yeah. That's another kind.
In one of the CNN stories we were reading, the girl did not want to be there, so the family was like, you know what, it's not gonna work. So they sold her. They took her back to the person who sold her, and then they sold her to another family.
Right.
And she was not returned to her home country.
The families aren't evil, okay? They're just desperate for a bride. But what that creates is a situation where a lot of young girls in these countries are targets for kidnapping. And once you're kidnapped, like you were saying, let's say you get sold back. Let's say you get sold back to you get returned to your kidnappers. That you're basically a slave at that point, right? Somebody owns you, and they took you from your home. So many crimes are being committed at this point. So yes, the family, they want a bride, they'll provide shelter or whatever for her, but the act of getting them there, this is why the international community is so appalled by this.
Well, the fact that I feel like the families are to blame too, because why would they be okay with supporting someone? I get that your son is desperate for a wife, but because of people who have the need for brides who are smuggled in, which is totally illegal, that's why the traffickers have this. There's supply and demand, right? There's demand, so that's why they can supply it. Or else, why would they have this business to begin with?
Yeah.
So I think that's completely, every single component of this thing is completely despicable.
That's absolutely true. I mean, if there wasn't such a high demand for teen brides, you wouldn't have people, you wouldn't have people going out and kidnapping people on the street. I mean, and even reading the ways that it's done, can you imagine your 12, 13, 14-year-old daughter just all of a sudden, being kidnapped and then sold into someone else's home? I mean, you can't even wish that on your
Worst enemy, yeah.
That's just one of the worst things that can happen to you. And of course, now luckily there are efforts all the time to help bring this into light and also rescue these girls.
Right.
So there are minor silver linings where victims of child trafficking, if they manage to get out, and there are other girls that go through the same thing, and then they can have share their experiences and begin to reclaim their lives that was lost. But that's just like very minor compared to the amount of people that are being trafficked each year in all these countries. I mean, just the latest one was last year after the Nepalese earthquake. At the border of India and Nepal, they caught 600 bodies that's alone in
that's
those 3
the
months.
problem is that when you are from a country that's that's China, rural China is pretty bad. Rural China, if you guys never, I mean, most of you probably never seen it, but rural China, most places are really remote. They have no laws because there's nobody like sheriffing it. There's like maybe a corrupt official, but there's nobody who's really policing that area. You basically make up your own rules. That's why the people over there, they can normally have as many kids as they want because no one's watching them, and they can do this kind of stuff where they can bring in a smuggled girl and then just be like, that's just my daughter-in-law from Vietnam. She came over or whatever. So I mean, it's not even like strangers trafficking, right? It's even family members are doing this because I don't know what it is. Like their lives are too impoverished. They need the money, so they're even selling their own kids across the border.
Unbelievable.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, this stuff it's so not even talked about, right? You don't even hear much about it. Like you don't really hear much about it. You hear a lot of about trafficking, but mostly, like I said, it's mostly trafficking into prostitution.
Right.
But you don't hear about this.
Right.
This is like
trafficking
sold as brides.
Right.
Like, when do you ever hear about that? You're like, oh yeah, like Taken, the movie.
Yeah.
That's
basically, yeah.
Well, the good thing is now, because of different articles that have been coming out, and like people like the Kung Fu nuns, they're coming out speaking about child trafficking and child brides and stuff like this. I feel like this issue is starting to come to light a little bit more, and now police officers actually in different countries, I feel like they're more aware now. So apparently in China, like if a police officer kind of suspects you of, like, for example, it's already kind of suspicious if you're a guy and you lead a group of girls. Like, I mean, sometimes it's done in vehicles so you can't see it, but if the police catch you, they'll actually they'll try to rescue the girls and try to return them to wherever they came from. They're not always successful and they don't always catch it, but like I feel like it's good that at least some police officers are aware that this is happening and are targeting the issue.
Yeah. Well, they know, like, one of the biggest biggest booms in business, I guess, for these traffickers is during, like you guys mentioned, the major catastrophes that's happening, because then literally some girls and boys will lose their parents in the disaster, and then that's when people go in, it can be disguised as an aid worker, and so that's one of the problematic
so horrific
areas.
So horrific.
So I mean, this is such a crazy issue. Like, we talked about Chinese child brides, like young brides. I mean, but at least that's
an
volunteer incident. We get it. When you're 12 to 13, maybe you shouldn't be a bride, but
or having babies.
Yeah, but it is happening.
Yeah.
But at least, like, these are girls who are like, they just, that's what they.
Right. You grew up in that town. You marry your friend from next door.
Yeah. Not that we support that, but that's at least volunteering. And the girls get to choose which one they marry. Right. Like, fine, okay, I'll marry. All right, whatever. But this is like, you don't get to choose. You don't get to have a future.
This is so horrible, and people need to know about it. And one of the reasons why I think whenever people hear about this, they're like, well, why aren't people doing stuff about it? It's not that easy. Like you're saying, this really happens in the really rural parts. Like, the trouble is catching the traffickers, because once they get in, you can't monitor it. Like, you don't have national guards, you don't have police forces combing over rural countrysides for this, right? So you really have to catch it at the border. So if you don't do it,
I do think they should. I think they should boost however much manpower. I mean, there is limited amount of manpower for so many crimes, but I think that this is one of the more heinous ones. There's few things in the world that are quite as bad, with the exception of like really gruesome, like, serial killers that will just like mutilate people, and also other things. Like, I don't even want to get into that, but I think this is bad enough that I feel like there should be more attention given to this, and to try to catch these traffickers. I mean, it's kind of hard because they're really interwoven and they're kind of underground,
And sometimes, like Mike said, it could be your own family.
Yeah.
So how do you even like combat this? It's truly heinous.
I mean, this is a big issue, mainly because you're saying put more manpower, but the manpower is not even the issue. Like, people there's just so much corruption going on in these local municipalities.
Sure, yeah.
Like even there's more people there. You got, hey, here's $20. Here's a pack of cigarettes.
Oh, turn a blind eye.
Like you know, this stuff it's a moral issue, right? We're dealing with like more of a moral issue than anything else. Like you can literally like you're in one of the most corrupt regions of the world. One of the most corrupt regions of the world. Like rural China, literally, it's just everything is done favoritism. This is like. Because like what was it like a bunch of years ago with the Sichuan earthquake, right? They found out that maybe 1 or 2 penny on the dollar went to the victims themselves.
Wow.
Where everything else was just like it was each level. It was like national level, provincial level, the municipalities. Each one took a cut.
I heard about that,
I mean, this is just like how do you even if you. This is like people know about this. You can't expect. I don't feel like you can really expect the local authorities to do.
No.
You can count on them. You can't really count on them.
Third party for sure. Like I'm thinking like third party. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. But somebody like people who are not associated with the local official. Because I agree with you, they're definitely corrupt. You know, or they're just like, you know what, they're in cahoots. Like I don't know. Like you know, so. I can't be trusting them, you know?
Yeah, so this is like shocking, I guess, to maybe a lot of people because literally, I mean, unless you're following along with this stuff, you probably never heard of this before. I mean, if you heard of it, kudos to you. I hope, you become more people become more aware. Yeah. But this is definitely something that's not spoken a lot of. Again, we know, we talked about the Team Bride, even with the Team Bride thing, that was something that was
shocked.
Yeah, that was really shocking to people. We didn't know about that a lot until we read up on it. And then this is something else that's kind of crazy where, this is one of the craziest crimes going on involving children that almost gets no attention. So hopefully you guys can become more aware, and we'll put some of the reading materials that we looked at in the description box for you guys, so you can read up on that if you want to.
For sure.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody.
See you.